We're just going to get started because it's time. We have two Class 2 auto dealer licenses to deal with first. The first one is number 225-2-25 for Roberts Towing, Inc., and we'll take them one at a time. Sorry. Oh, I should welcome other members of our staff too. We have our clerk with us here tonight, Scott Matthews, who will talk about these two. We also have, let me just see, Kat Kemet from the Planning Department, Katie Wewell from Planning, and Jonah Temple from Law. And John Sisson, the Economic Development Director is here with us too. They're all on Zoom. So let's start with, again, number 225, Class 2 Auto Dealer License, Roberts Towing, Inc. Scott?
Yes, I checked in with ISD, police, and finance, treasury, and they are all good to go. Both of them. The next two items are good.
Yeah, we'll just take them one at a time. So the first one, Roberts, is all set to go. That means they're paid up. They have no outstanding taxes or fines or anything. So can we have a motion to approve number 225, 2-25?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And the next one, the same situation, 11-25, Class 2 Auto Dealer License for New England Motor Mart in West Newton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Excuse me? Oh, so we did not have a motion for that. Councilor Lobovitz, thank you. Now we'll take that vote again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No one opposed? Anyone opposed? Great, thank you. Sorry, I kind of rushed that. Our next item is a request for the petitioner to withdraw a previous petition, which is number 68-24, which was then a request to amend a special permit number 40-97 parens 2 and allow a freestanding sign at 269-287 Grove Street. They've requested to withdraw that. And as we'll all see, instead we have a substitute new motion. We should vote to approve the withdrawing of that. And then they've come in with a new request, which we'll deal with next. So is there a motion to accept that? Councilor Leary, thank you. All in favor? Say aye. No one opposed? So what they have come in with instead is number 4-25, a request to amend special permit, again, number 40-97 parens 2, and allow expansion of a freestanding sign and a third secondary sign at 269-287 Grove Street. We didn't discuss this ahead. Planning, are you prepared to talk about this first, or should I go to the petitioner for this?
Madam Chair, I think we were continuing the briefer presentation format, so I believe the petitioner should be ready to share their proposal.
Well, because we had not discussed this ahead, I was just being sure that you didn't want to go first, so you do not?
No, thank you.
Okay, is there someone here from Greatland Realty Partners to talk about the petition for this sign? Oh, come up. Great, thank you. If you can just be sure the microphone is on at the base.
Hello.
Hi.
Great. Hi, I'm Tori Sabatino with Greatland Realty Partners. I am a development manager. Greatland is a Boston-based development firm. We have just over 2 million square feet in our portfolio. The majority of our properties are in the greater Boston area. That includes Lexington, Weston, Cambridge, and most recently, Newton. We purchased 275 Grove Street in the summer of 2023. We knew during that time buying a 500,000 square foot office building with 30% vacancy meant that we had a lot of work to do. So in the last year and a half, we have invested just about $10 million in upgrading our amenities. We just mentioned the petition to withdraw the original application.
Could I just stop you for a second? Could you speak a little closer to the microphone?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Where was I? So we withdrew our original petition, but I was here a year ago to present the original signage package. In that presentation, I emphasized our desire to really open our doors and welcome the community in. So the majority of our investment, for those who are not familiar with the property, it's a 3-building campus that's connected with a 4-story glass atrium. We focus on the atrium because we believe it's a really beautiful and unique space to hold something as small as meeting someone for a coffee or lunch, but also hosting school fundraisers or holiday craft fairs. So in addition to the atrium upgrades, we also created a new conference center just adjacent to our existing cafe, Kendall Kitchen. This is more of a formal conference space that the public can reserve, as well as our tenants, to host events and conferences. And lastly, the remainder of the investment went to upgrading our fitness center for our tenants and some common areas in the building. If you've recently driven past the property, we have painted the exterior mullions and entries black just to give it a modern touch. We've also upgraded the exterior landscaping and plan to complete that scope of work in the spring once the weather allows it. Before I turn it over to our design consultant team, Whitney Vegas, who's on the Zoom call, when I presented a year ago, that petition was not approved. We took the recommendation from the committee here and the UDC to utilize what's existing at the property and really enhance that. So you'll see in our presentation, we have incorporated that feedback, and this new revised design has also already been approved by the UDC. Last year and today, I also wanted to talk about Kendall Kitchen. The special permit currently does not allow for us to advertise restaurants at the property. Kendall Kitchen is owned by its founder, Harach. It's their third store in the greater Boston area, third restaurant, excuse me. Unfortunately, a year later, after advocating on social media and through word of mouth in the neighborhood, the sales are not where we would like them to be. So we stand here again today, and you'll see in our presentation that we've incorporated Kendall Kitchen's logo on the existing monument signage in order to advertise this restaurant and hopefully increase sales to get Harach a long and healthy restaurant at 275 Grove. So I will hand over the presentation to Whitney Vegas, who's on the line.
What's the name again?
Whitney Vegas. It's either Evan or Holly. Maybe.
Evan?
Oh, yes, I think he's asking Tom.
Yes, you should be able to check in there.
There we go. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Happy to be here. My name is Evan Allen. I'm a creative director with Whitney Vegas, and I've been working closely with Tori and the team at Greatland. And I will share for you some plans that we are hoping to bring to life. Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we are.
Great. So as a general orientation to the site and the layout of the building, the structure is really comprised of 3 buildings that are joined together by an atrium, which is this sort of T-shaped white area that you're seeing down the middle. Primary entrance to the building off the street is over here at Plan East, with secondary entrances at Plan South for the parking lot and Plan West for an external parking garage as well. So the area that we're going to be focusing primarily on today is this area over here at Plan East, which faces Grove Street. For starters, we're proposing the implementation of a new building identity here. As you can see from this example in the bottom right-hand corner, we're proposing that this is sort of halo lit around the back edge, and has a nice sort of copper finish to the face of the numerals. It'd be lit at night, and you can see in the rendering of the building on the right-hand side, the approximate scale of what we're looking at for that building identification. Some details if anyone's interested, but I don't think that's primary tonight. Secondary, what we're proposing is new signage on this stone wall out closer to the street. There's a plan down here on the right where you can see the stone wall that exists currently and what we're proposing to put on it. The entrance to the building that we were just looking at is right here in this area as you come up the walkway. And this driveway area here is how you would enter the site from the street in a car or on foot on the sidewalk. What we're proposing here is a new building address identification on the left-hand side of the wall that is individually cut metal letters that are pinned to the wall. Additionally, we're proposing signage for our 4 primary tenants in these buildings. Each of these logos for the tenants would be, cut out of metal, cut as metal letters in order to match the 275 Grove address, and they'll be mounted to this black mesh background panel, which is intended to sort of disappear into the background as much as possible, letting the stone shine through, but also creating an even and consistent surface on top of which we can install these cut metal letters for the logos. The third part that Tori was mentioning before was the Kendall Kitchen ID, which we are currently showing over here on the right-hand side of the wall. Their logo is a circle, so fits more nicely in a more primarily vertical layout. Moving forward, this is a orthogonal elevation of the wall, the approximate dimensions that we're discussing, and the approximate layout. As you can see along the bottom edge here, there's already existing external lighting that shines up at these logos on the wall. We have some construction details as to how we propose these get built and installed. But as mentioned previously, the intention of this mesh is to be as invisible as possible, but also to help create a consistent surface on which to install these logos. These are some views approaching from each direction. On the left-hand side, you're looking at the view from the eastbound direction, so you can see the wall with the logos on it there. The view from the westbound direction is really very minimal. This over here is the sort of return edge of that wall. So not highly visible from the west direction, but as soon as you turn into the driveway there to the right, you'll see it quite well. And that is the extent of the presentation. Are there any questions?
Isn't there a request for additional signs also? Or is it just this one on the stone wall? I thought,
The one on the stone wall, currently our special permit only allows for 2 secondary signs. With the 3 entrances, we're requesting a 3rd secondary sign. So we could have that 275 Grove sign on each entrance, the first sign that was presented. If you could flip back to that, Evan.
Sure, yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so that's the end of your presentation?
I just have a few more words if that's all right. Before I wrap up, I wanted to share some exciting news. 275 Grove last week, we actually signed a 100,000 square foot lease with an office user. The new tenant wants to remain confidential while they share that news internally. We're hoping to announce that publicly within the next week or so. But this now officially breaks us into stabilization at the property that we believe is a reflection based off of the investment that we've made over the past year and a half. But to that, and based off the presentation that you just saw, with new tenants coming into the building, we're requesting moving forward only when we have a tenant name change at the monument signing, that can be approved administratively. And then to summarize our presentation and to be clear on exactly what we are seeking for approval tonight, I wanted to go over the three things. First is to allow for the third secondary wall sign on the building. Second is approval to modify the stone wall signage to include tenant signage and future administrative approval for tenant name changes. And lastly, to specifically delete the advertising restrictions in condition number 9 of the original special permit. I'm going to read that condition. It consists of 4 sentences, and I'll explain what language we would like to delete. The first sentence reads that services such as a restaurant, coffee shop, newsstand, dry cleaning drop-off and pickup, ATM, and similar accessory uses to service the primary office use of the building are allowed. We would like to keep that language. The next sentence reads, there shall be no advertising or promotion of such uses to the general public. We would like to delete that language from the special permit. There shall be no advertising of such uses on the exterior or grounds of the office building. We would like to delete that language from the special permit. And the last sentence of the condition reads, the accessory restaurants shall meet all applicable health department requirements. We would like to keep that language as is. That concludes our presentation tonight. I want to thank our partner Whitney Vegas for presenting and for your time. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public, either in the chamber or on Zoom, who would like to speak to this? Yes. Oh, it's true. Thank you. Before I do that, sorry, Mr. Alfred, planning, would you like to say something now?
Yes, I have a few brief slides. I'll pull those up now. Good evening. Hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is Kat Kemet. I'm from the planning department. This is petition 4-25 at 269-287 Grove Street. The petitioner previously applied for a freestanding sign that had a different design, which we heard a little bit about tonight. They have requested to withdraw that petition and have applied with a different design and for slightly different relief. They have submitted a special permit request to amend special permit number 440-972 to allow the expansion of existing freestanding sign and a third secondary sign, and to change some of the language to allow advertising for accessory uses in that amendment. By way of a little bit of the neighborhood context, this is a large property. It's 489,460 square feet with a 500,000 square foot office building in the business use 4 zone. The site is right near the Riverside MBTA station and the Woodland Park Apartments. And the project was constructed in 2000 by special permit. The relief here, the petitioner is requesting to amend an existing condition in their special permit, which prohibits advertising accessory uses on the site, including restaurants and cafes. There is an existing cafe on the site, so they're asking to remove the language that prohibits the cafe from having a sign. They are also asking to alter an existing freestanding sign to add the names of individual businesses in the building. That requires relief, and they need relief to add that third secondary sign. When considering this request, the council should consider if the site in BU4 is an appropriate location for the proposed signs, if the signs will adversely affect the neighborhood, if the signs will create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, if access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved, and if the proposed exceptions to the sign ordinance should be permitted and are appropriate due to the nature of the use, the architecture of the buildings, or their location with reference to the street is such that such exceptions are in the public interest. And we had no major concerns to note here. We are supportive of the request to allow the advertising of the accessory use and believe it's appropriate for the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. Now we will take comments from the public. Mr. Alfred?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Richard Alfred. My wife and I have lived at 73 Grove Street, Auburndale for 37 years. We raised our children here, and we particularly appreciate the nature of the neighborhood being a non-commercial neighborhood. I am the chair of the Auburndale Historic District Commission, but I give this testimony solely in my individual capacity. I'm here to ask this committee to reject the petitioner's request to amend the special permit 40-97 (2). The existing special permit prohibits any on-site advertising on the outside or on the grounds of Riverside Center. It includes that prohibition, which I believe came at the urging of the community, because Grove Street is designated as a scenic road. There are no signs of a commercial nature on Grove Street outside Auburndale Village, and never have been to my knowledge. While Riverside Center is just outside of the Auburndale Historic District, it abuts the district and impacts the nature and quality of the district. The bases for the planning department's support for petitioner's request are faulty for several reasons. Planning accepts, without analysis, petitioner's argument that the proposed signage would improve business for tenants of the building, specifically Kendall Kitchen. And I want to say as an aside, Kendall Kitchen is terrific. I go there frequently. I urge all of the city councilors to go, and anybody listening to this presentation. But there's no evidence that additional signage outside the building would increase the patronage more than the existing internal signage or other forms of advertisement, such as social media websites, online bulletin boards for local matters, et cetera. Now, I heard for the first time tonight that there have been efforts on social media. I don't know what those were, but I follow a number of bulletin boards in the area. The Auburndale Neighbors is one, and there are many others. And I've never seen any efforts to advertise in those or in any local newspapers. Planning asserts that the proposed signage will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Planning is wrong, as my testimony indicates, because of the scenic designation of Grove Street and the impact on the abutting historic district. Planning states that the proposed signs are not objectionable because they are informational in nature. This prong of planning's rationale is puzzling. All signs are informational. That's the purpose of every sign. It makes no sense to conclude that the proposed signs are unobjectionable because they are merely informational.
Mr. Alfred, can you wrap up? You've passed your 3-minute mark.
I've got another minute. I didn't know there was a limitation. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Finally, petitioner and planning assert that the proposed signs are similar to the signage utilized on other large multi-tenant buildings in Newton. The proposed signs are distinguishable from any other signs in Newton on large multi-tenant buildings in at least two material ways. First, as stated, Grove Street is a scenic road. No other building with commercial signage in Newton is on a similarly designated road, to my knowledge. Second, Riverside Center abuts and impacts an historic district. As I've said, no other building with commercial signage, of which I am aware, abuts an historic district and would have an impact such as this one would on an historic district. If the city council were to allow petitioner's request to amend the special permit, it would be setting a new precedent inconsistent with its efforts and goals to preserve as much as possible the non-commercial nature of neighborhoods where such signage has, at least until now, not been allowed. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alfred. I should have warned you ahead about the timing. We have a little clock up there on the board, but I will remember to point that out to people so they can be aware. Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to speak to this? John Sisson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I do not wish to quibble with the head of the historical commission or neighborhood commission, but the use of the scenic road in this instance is a misnomer. As our law department pointed out earlier in the lab before this, I think when this hearing first opened, the scenic road designation applies to the public way and to no private parcels abutting that private way. And I would defer to my colleagues in the law department about the specifics of that. But I do remember that that objection was raised before, and the law department did explain does not apply to the signage on a private parcel. As the Economic Development Director for the City of Newton, I would just like to speak in favor of amending the special permit for 269 to 287 Grove Street for several reasons. Number one, Boston's commercial office market remains very weak. The research has shown that office vacancy rates have increased for 12 quarters in a row, reaching 22% in the fourth quarter of this past year. We're not out of the woods yet either, because office tenants are not signing new leases, or it's very rare for them to be signing new leases. Instead, they are extending leases or renewing them. Number two, in spite of these market conditions, I applaud Greatland Realty Partners for investing in this property. I visited last week and ran into Tori Sabatino on the property and was really impressed with I think it's a $3.5 million project they're doing just on the atrium itself. And then third, I would, and I think this is important, unlike Waltham and Watertown, Newton does not have a large commercial tax base. In fact, Newton has precious little Class A office space like this property. As a city staffer and as a Newton taxpayer, I want to see this property leased up and healthy so that it's generating revenue not only for the private owner, but it is generating property tax revenue for the city. And in closing, I would only mention that we have this. It is not on the city that this is taking a year to do, but these special permits do drag things out, unfortunately, for the commercial sector. We first started talking, I believe, about getting a sign for this, immigrant entrepreneur Hratch Ardurian's cafe in October of 2023. So it'd be helpful if we could move this forward, and I appreciate the committee's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sisson. Do any other members of the public want to speak to this? I don't see any hands. Mr. Temple, do you want to quickly address the issue of the scenic road restriction that has been raised tonight?
Sure, Chair, I'm happy to. We did discuss this last time this petition was before you. And John had this absolutely right. The scenic road protections only apply to the removal of trees or stone walls within the public way. So scenic road protections are not implicated in this petition.
Thank you for clarifying that. It's important for us all to understand what those implications are. If there are no other comments from the public, we'll take that into the committee. Councilor Block.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the petitioner for listening to our discussion last time and for making adjustments to their proposal. It is far better than the original proposal. Of the three reliefs which are before us, I think it's fair to say the third one is the controversial one. I'm fully supportive of the first two, which I won't review. We all kind of saw that. I think the reference to the scenic road is important, despite the fact that the legal implications don't extend to private property. As I have thought about this and considered the reason why this restriction was included in the original special permit, I think it is because there is currently no commercial signage on this road. To me, that's pretty important. I drive this road many times every day. This is the connection between Lower Falls and the rest of Newton. I think the appearance of this building from the road is magnificent. I think the past and present owners of this building are doing a wonderful job with the landscaping, and they're proposing a very sensitive plan. But what's before us is making determinations, particularly regarding whether the third relief that they are asking for would adversely affect the neighborhood. I think it is very hard for me to conclude anything besides the fact that it would have an adverse impact on the neighborhood. And that's how I'm viewing it right now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Block, let me just clarify. The thing that you think is most troublesome is the third secondary wall sign?
It's the Kendall Kitchen portion of the sign that is linked to the amendment, to the removal of the requirement in the original special permit that the petitioners have asked for.
So that would apply to all three of their requests, or just the K logo sign on the stone wall, or just the third secondary wall sign?
It's just the K on the sign in the. of
The K on the sign on the stone
The
wall?
Kendall Kitchen portion of the sign. It's not the signage on the building, the address,
Okay.
or the, what I consider to be more directory informational that the petitioner is proposing for the four major tenants of the building.
Thanks. I just wanted us to understand what it was you found most
Sure.
difficult about this.
I look forward to hearing from my fellow counselors on this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Block. Councillor Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a perfectly reasonable request, to be honest with you. I mean, it is a pretty road. I don't think it impacts it negatively. It's tasteful, it's not intrusive, garish, or anything that I would think out of place. And now that there's a sign for Kendall Kitchen, maybe I'll go there because I'll see the sign. But I really think this is something that is quite reasonable, and I like to support all our commercial spaces, and I don't think we should be giving anyone any trouble over this sign. So I'm in full support, and I would love to move this along.
Thank you, Councillor Leary. Councillor Lobovitz.
Yes, I'm curious about who these signs would appeal to. In other words, if you're driving by, is it easy to see the signs? Would the average driver note them? Who are the signs directed to? I guess that's my question. It's good, through the chair, if somebody could answer that.
Thank you. Ms. Sabatino, would you like to come back and address that question?
The signs are not only for tenants, it's really directional when you're approaching the building. Say you're a visitor, the list of tenants would be visible, so you know you're at the correct address. And then, as we stated before, Kendall Kitchen, we believe this would increase their sales. As previously mentioned, people would now know that Kendall Kitchen is a tenant and a restaurant at the property. So it's open to the public and public use is permitted. That's what we believe this sign would communicate. Thank you.
I think Councillor Lobovitz's question was asking, like, what type of users are they? People who are in a vehicle, people who are walking or biking or heading to the T? Like, who do you think it is who will be seeing and noticing the signs? Is that correct, Councillor Lobovitz?
That's correct.
I would say all of the above. anyone passing the sign, whether a walker, driving, anyone who was just listed.
Does that satisfy your question? Counselor Lebovitz?
It's obvious that somebody walking by would see it, but I'm particularly interested in drivers, because I don't think there's a lot of pedestrian traffic through there, or is there? That's a question as well. So if somebody were driving by, it's hard for me to appreciate how big these signs are from the presentation. So if I were driving by, would I be able to read them if I were driving by at whatever speed that is, 30 miles an hour? Especially if I weren't particularly focused on the building. Thank you.
Ms. Sabatino, do you think that's a question that Evan Allen might better address in terms of how the sign was designed for visibility?
Yes, I think so, Evan, if you.
Evan, would you like to address that?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, if I could share again, 1 second. So what you're seeing now is a sort of rough rendering of what they would look like as you're driving by. The 275 Grove would be really quite visible. It is as designed. Those letters are 14 inches tall each. A good rule of thumb for visibility and letter size is 1 inch for every 10 feet. So at 14 inches, we're looking at visibility from quite a long distance. More anecdotally, something to bear in mind is that highway signage that we're all familiar with, the white letters on the green background, are 4 inches tall. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of visibility here. And then in terms of the logos that we're putting on there, each of those resides on a 1'6" tall background. So the total height of each logo would be slightly less than 1'6", with the maximum width possibility of 6'2". So while I can't speak precisely to the size of the letters that we're showing on the screen right now, I would estimate each of those at around 3 inches tall. So with that, I think, the view from the east is quite legible. As we mentioned, the view from the west, you don't really get a great view of the wall from that side. Is there any more detail I can provide?
No, I think that's good. Thank you very much. Counselor Lebovitz, are you all set with that? All right. Counselor Downs?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to say I'm on a scenic road, and I would not consider a sign such as this to be that obtrusive if it were on my street. And I align myself with the comments of my colleague from Ward 1. Driving down and biking down Grove Street, which I do at the speed limit of 25, I have no idea of what's inside this particular building, or why I would want to visit it. And having some signage there would help me, and I assume others, to know that there is a coffee shop there. And I don't know how we're going to support businesses if we don't allow them to do at least some advertising. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor Downs. Counselor Lucas?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Counselor Leary and Downs on this particular petition. The sign is, I think, well done. I don't think it's going to create an adverse condition for the neighbors. It's not like the sign is way too big, or it has bright lights, or if the sign is moving. It's not a billboard or anything like that. It's just a sign on a brick wall. The sign is, I think, perfectly sized, and I respect the fact that this is it's near a historic district. And just for a point of clarification, in Upper Falls, they have a historic district and they have that gas station right there on the corner on Chestnut Street. This is, that I would say that is more intrusive to the neighborhood than a sign size of my laptop, it appears. So I am in full support of this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Councillor Laredo, President Laredo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just trying to get a little clarification here. I have no problem with the idea of advertising on social media or elsewhere. I think that's just logical. I see no harm whatsoever. And in regard to the scenic road issue, I certainly agree with the definition that Attorney Temple has cited. That's the correct definition as far as I know. But I do think that there is something to be said for the concept of a scenic road, and you're designating as such. There's, even though it limits you in certain ways, I think there's other intents there as well. So while it may not be prohibited by the scenic road rules, I think in the spirit of it, I do think it's worth at least considering. But I'm also very sympathetic to the needs of our businesses to be able to promote themselves. So I just want to get, if I could, from, is it Ethan? Forgive me if I don't have your last name correctly. Pardon?
Evan.
Evan, forgive me, I'm sorry. The two areas of signage, could you just outline them again? One is the building itself, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
On the building, so if I drive into the property on the building itself, you're looking to have a separate sign for the restaurant, right?
No, there's one sign for the restaurant that lives on the wall out closer to the street. On the building itself, as seen here, there is no sign for the restaurant.
So I just want to understand what we're being asked to approve, and maybe it's, I'm not following. Are we simply being asked to approve the ability to put another sign on the, next to the 275 on the stone wall?
Tori might be able to speak.
Well, maybe Ms. Kemet could answer the question for us as our planning person.
Yep, this is Kat Kemet from the Planning Department. The relief is to amend this. It's three elements of relief. The first is to amend the special permit to allow advertising of accessory uses at all. It's currently not allowed, so that's one. The second element of relief is to amend this flagstone wall to allow the individual business names. And that would include the Kendall Kitchen sign, and that is contingent on allowing the accessory sign to exist at all. And the third element of relief is to allow a third secondary sign. So those are the address signs that would be affixed to the exterior of the building.
So again, I'm just trying to understand the relief we're being asked to give, leaving aside the social media advertisement, stuff like that. The relief we're being asked to deal with relates solely to the signs on the stone wall.
No, so one element of it's there. So two of them are tied together: the accessory use advertising and the signs on the wall. But there is another element of relief, which is allowing a third secondary sign, which has nothing to do with this wall.
I'm sorry, Ms. Kemet, I'm having a very hard time hearing you, and maybe that's just me.
Okay, can you hear me?
A little bit better, thank you.
So these are this is one of the secondary signs. There are three of these secondary signs, so-called, and two are allowed without needing a special permit, but the third requires special permit relief. So that is.
Can I just stop you there? So there's allowed to have two secondary signs. They're looking to put a third secondary sign. And where would that secondary sign be on the premises itself?
All three of those would be affixed to the exterior of the building, at the entrances that are indicated here.
And then on the stone wall, you're looking to be able to put multiple businesses having some kind of logo on there, right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I'm good for the moment. Thank you.
Let me just quickly follow up on President Laredo's questions. Two of the signs that are being requested are just address signs that say 275 Grove, and one has the logos of the businesses. Is that correct? Someone?
So there will be 3 signs that just say 275 Grove that will be affixed to the building. And there will also, those will be new.
There will be 2 signs, I think,
3.
that
3.
are affixed to the building.
Evan, correct me if I'm
Third
wrong, but
is on
there
the
are
stone wall.
3, right?
There are 3 total.
There are 3 total. 2 are affixed to the building and 1 is on the stone wall. That's
All
how
3
I'm
are
understanding it.
affixed to the
Yes, thank you.
building.
Tori, come forward. Excuse me, Ms. Kemet. I'm just going to ask Tori to step in for a second to explain from her point of view. Go ahead, please.
So this plan shows 3 secondary signs, one at each of the entrances. The 4th sign is the rock wall that is existing today, and would like to amend that signage to include the tenant signage, which includes the tenant being the restaurant, the accessory use, Kendall Kitchen. So 4 total signs.
3 are affixed to the building, which just give the address. The one on the stone wall gives the name and logos of the specific tenants.
Correct.
Thank you. Councilor Lato,
So
follow up?
that really explained it for me, and I'm sorry for my confusion. So with the 3 signs, what we call the secondary signs, they're affixed to the building. They say 275, that's it, right?
Correct, as seen on the screen. right
I
now.
see absolutely no issue with that. You just happen to have 3 entrances to the property. If I'm driving in a certain way, I want to be able to find the place. So the only other issue is with this principal freestanding sign, and the question that we're facing is, we can have 275 there already, and the question is, do we get to put some other kind of smaller advertising for a restaurant or some other building occupant? Is that it?
Correct, and this rock wall is existing today. It just says Riverside Center. So we rebranded
It
to,
says Riverside Center.
Right.
or 275. 275 is probably better if you're driving by
exactly,
and you're trying to find where you're going. At least that's how I would do it. So I guess the only question is the advertisement that you're putting on there going to somehow be a negative? And you're looking to place more than one advertisement on there. You might have 4 or 5 tenants on there,
correct.
and you're looking to do that and get the permit so you don't have to come back here multiple times.
Correct.
Okay. And do we have some consensus on this? Are we in agreement as to what the size of that name sign would be? Is that spelled out in the proposed order?
I believe it is. Ms. Kemet, is that correct? The size of the sign? And the
We,
letter?
we reference the plans which have the dimensions for the signs in it, yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Kemet, it is or not?
We
The-
re- Oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
can answer. If I'm a little bit clear, it's Katie Wewell. So the plans are the governing documents. So as you can see on this slide, if it's clear, you can see the dimensions of the sign. And that is all kind of set forth in the ordinance of how we measure signs, what counts. And I think it's something the UDC is heavily involved with. So these plans have been vetted by the UDC. So we want them to match. So that is the plan, would be to reference any new governing, controlling sign plans.
And the dimensions that are represented in that, the picture is
Yeah.
consistent with the measurement of the dimensions that we've been given?
Yes.
And is there any maximum number of businesses that we put up there? I mean, would we 8 or 10 probably dilute the whole concept of it, to be honest, but.
How would you change this? Right now, there are 5 tenants that you're showing. How adaptable is this to future changes in tenancy?
As previously when I first spoke, we asked when there are tenant changes, we would ask for an administrative approval. As you can see on the sign, there's 4 spots plus the Kendall Kitchen, so 5. Those would go to the larger tenants in the building. So like you said, we would not want to dilute the sign itself. We would hold that place for the largest users. So 5 total.
5 total.
Correct.
So the 275 and then 4 businesses?
Correct.
And are you comfortable with us putting that in a special permit?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm all set. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Oh, Councilor Lucas.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on what President Laredo said. Are you suggesting, through the chair to President Laredo, suggesting a condition that there will be no more than 5 advertising signs on that stone wall?
Feel particularly strongly about it, but I do recognize it. I don't think it's in our interest to have just a proliferation of signage with 10 businesses in there. I mean, frankly, no small business could be able to negotiate getting a landlord to put their name on the door anyways. I know how that goes. But you know, that is something, I just think from a visual perspective, I don't want these folks coming back here in 6 months to put an extra sign. That's silly. But I don't want to have 20 or 30 signs there either.
So would you, I mean, I would be open to putting in a condition to say no more than 5.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's not a magic number. It's just some outer limit that meets their needs, but we're not going to just get in the unlikely event we get a proliferation of requests.
Mhm.
Frankly, they can tell their tenants, sorry, you can only put 5 there. Maybe it'll help you in your negotiation.
Yeah, all set.
But as they said, they would come back. Before I take you, Councilor Block, I'm going to hear from Councilor Farrell, who hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Chair. And this will be very quick because Councilor Laredo and Councilor Lucas have both addressed the issues. But I am concerned whether there are 5 signs now, whether the space that they are within can be determined as 5 by 10 feet, and we want nothing bigger than that on that wall. I don't know what the space is, but I don't want to have somebody on a different part of this road come back and say, well, you allowed sign there, and we have one that's 12 by 14 feet. So I just, 4 signs and the 5 signs, whatever it is, but I like it to be within the controlled space. If they want to change the names that are on there, that's up to them. But there would only be that much space. And I do think that this is not a bad looking sign at all. And I apologize to my colleague, Councilor Block. I think this is good. I just, in terms of setting a precedent on this, I would like there to be some constraints on what that size is. It won't be any larger than that, and there will never be more than 5 businesses noted, if that's possible.
Thank you, Councilor Farrell. Just to remind us all, the sizes are outlined on this. The size for each of those 4 major tenants is 6 feet 2 inches by 1.5 feet high. So that is the size. Nothing about a 12-foot sign per business looks like it would fit on this wall. Just if we're going to follow these dimensions, we do have a consideration of limiting the amount of signs. Anybody else want to speak? Councilor Block, did you want to speak again?
Yes, Chair.
And then I would too.
I think this is a very attractive design, as I said initially, and I thank the petitioner for listening to our suggestions the last time they were before us. I think the questions that several of my colleagues have raised about the size of these signs is interesting because there will be future changes to the tenants, even perhaps to Kendall Kitchen. There'll be future owners of this building. The ownership of this building has changed a number of times just in the last few years. So what size, what's the maximum size of a sign? This is a question through the chair to the planning department. What's the maximum size of the sign that could be placed where the current Kendall Kitchen sign is displayed? Is that the?
Just at the end of the stone wall, is that the part you're
Yes,
asking
is
about?
is that the dimension of the black mesh behind it? Or is it something less than that? I mean, the Kendall Kitchen sign looks like it takes up maybe half, probably not half of that space.
Well, by the dimensions that we're looking at, it's 1 foot, 10 inches wide. A little K floating.
You're talking about the width of that black
The width
mesh,
of the area that the
which I'm,
round circle orange K fits in
yes.
is dimensioned. Assuming that that is a set template, but we could confirm this in our council order if we want.
This is the 1 foot, 10 inches wide, and the height is,
The height would be 3'2".
3'2". So if we approve, if we approve all of the petitioners' requests, that entire frame could be turned into a sign. Is that right? Am I understanding this correctly?
I would guess, looking at it, that that's accurate. If they keep with this configuration, 4 vertical major tenants and, I mean, 4 horizontal and 1 vertical. But again, I think as Ms. Sabatino said, if tenants are going to change or the sign's going to change, they would come back again for approval. The way this is set up right now, that's what it looks like. Is that true, Ms. Sabatino, that you can just nod if you think, yes, I think your understanding is correct for now. And if we want to put constrictions or restrictions on that, we can talk about it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, anybody else? Before we take a vote on this, I would just like to weigh in and say I very much appreciate that you listened to us last time and that you came back with some changes. I will echo comments some of my colleagues have made. I think it's a very good looking sign. I think wayfinding and place finding is really important, and putting the address 275 Grove in several locations is really helpful. I think putting the names of the tenants is very important, especially the kitchen. If I were them, I wouldn't be happy with the little K, because I'm not sure people are going to know what that means as they walk or drive by, but that's their choice. They've chosen that logo. That wouldn't mean much to me driving by if I were Councilor Leary or me coming and not knowing. I think it's a little anonymous, but I think they really deserve to be known for where they are. I think there are a lot of people who are coming to Riverside from LaSalle and who live in the neighborhood who don't know that it's there. And I think it's really important that we let people know what it's there. To some of Mr. Alfred's points, I remember when Hotel Indigo was there and Box 109 or whatever it was called, and there were signs along the scenic roadway for commercial establishments. There is a big T Riverside sign there. And I'm not sure that Riverside Center isn't indicating an office or commercial use. So I don't find this out of character. I think it's quite tasteful. I think it's really important to let people know what's inside the building. So I plan to vote in favor of this. Councillor Block, would you like to make some motion on this?
I would like to make a motion on this. I will move to approve the petitioner's request. I will be voting against this, but that's the motion.
Thank you. Would you like to close the public hearing?
Yes, I'd move to close the public hearing.
Let's do that first. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 Nobody is opposed then. And we will move on with Councillor Block's motion, but let's hear the findings and conditions first.
So for findings, we have 1, the site in the business 4 zone is an appropriate location for the proposed freestanding sign and secondary signs because it's located in a business zone. The signs will improve visibility of accessory uses on site and support the business functions on the site. 2, the site is an appropriate location for the amendment because allowing businesses to advertise is consistent with the intent of the zone and will remove a barrier to local businesses. 3, the signs will not adversely affect the neighborhood because they are of a comparable size and design to other signs on office buildings in the city. 4, the signs will not create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians because no changes are proposed that will adversely impact parking or circulation. The signs will aid in wayfinding for visitors. 5, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. And 6, the proposed exceptions to the sign ordinance should be permitted and are appropriate due to the nature of the use on the premises, which includes several businesses and 1 accessory use. These exceptions are in the public interest because the site is located in a business zone and the signs will support the business functions on the site while improving wayfinding for visitors and patrons. And for conditions, the first are the plan referencing. So these plans include the size and orientation of all of the signs that we discussed tonight. Condition 9 of Council Order 40-97 parenthesis 2 will be amended to the following. Those services such as a restaurant, coffee shop, newsstand, dry cleaning drop-off and pickup, ATM, and similar accessory uses to service the primary office use of the building are allowed. The accessory restaurants shall meet all applicable health department requirements. And we also have standard building permit and occupancy conditions. A further condition was also discussed here to limit the individual tenant signs. That is something that we can add if that is something that the committee wants to see.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. I would like to get back to that one too before we vote on and before I hear again from President Laredo. Is there a desire to limit the number of signs, say the 5 or the size of each individual sign, or would we like to leave that going forward and let them come back if there are any changes? Does somebody want to, Councilor Lucas?
Yes, I would like to amend the council order to include a maximum of 5 signs for tenants.
You're making a motion to that
Yes.
amendment then? And it's seconded by Councilor Lobovitz. Councilor Laredo, can we vote on this before we hear from you, or we?
We certainly can, Madam Chair.
Okay. All in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to that amendment?
I'm opposed.
I am too. No. So that's 6 yeas and 2 nos, correct? Okay. So that's an approved part of the amendment. Councilor President Laredo.
So this is for planning. I'm looking back at the original count or at the time board order, and it calls for an annual contribution to the city's operational intervillage bus service and also the continuous operation of a shuttle service. Have those been ever amended?
I can speak to that. I recall when if you recall, Councilor Laredo, the former petition before I think this company took over, that special permit was never exercised, but I recall that they asked for that, I think, to be removed, and it was not the will of the committee to remove that language. So regardless, that sort of middle kind of lost special permit was never exercised, but that language still stands today. And the current
ever-
petitioner has never asked to amend that.
Have we ever collected this money?
I can look into that. I know I'm pretty sure I have the answer somewhere. I just can't say for sure, but I can look into that.
I mean, we don't, it's not part of this special permit, but if it is in the original order, there's 2 requirements in there. One's to pay money and 2's to maintain some kind of shuttle service. And unless and until we revoke that order's in effect, and I would hope we'd enforce it. And it may be, but let me be clear, it may be perfectly appropriate to in the future revoke that order if there's a reason for doing so. But I am concerned when I see some payment obligation and we apparently aren't collecting the money. So I'm not going to raise it further this evening, but I would ask that someone look into that and that someone report back through the chair to the committee on that issue. Thank you. And I may be wrong. If it's been amended, by all means, tell me. I'm just looking at what I see here. Thank you.
President Laredo, thank you for reminding many of us of that, who may have forgotten. And Ms. Sabatino, I think that's something for your group to be cognizant of and aware of. I'm not sure where it goes. Okay, anything else? So we're ready to vote on the motion as amended? Yes, go ahead.
Counselor Block,
No.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Farrell, Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lobowitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Move ahead. Now people can find Kendall's Kitchen soon, I hope. Okay, our next item is number 5-25, a request to alter and extend a non-conforming two-family dwelling use at 273-275 Webster Street. Who is here to talk to the petition?
Madam Chair, Lawrence Lee on behalf of the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Go ahead.
May I share my screen, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, Lawrence Lee, Rosenberg, Freeman, and Lee, with offices at 246 Walnut Street in Newton. On behalf of the petitioner, we have a very simple petition before you, which really is a two-family house to a two-family house. So let me quickly go through these slides and give you a quick overview of the project. We are located in an SR3 zoning district, but as you can see here, this is a two-family home on Webster Street. There are a mixture of homes in this immediate area. You'll see that there's a lot of two-family houses in and around our location, as well as single-family homes. Because we are technically a legally non-conforming two-family use in an SR3, single-family residence, that's why we're here before you. Just an aerial photograph and just more orientation in terms of where we are located. So just to recap very quickly, SR3, we have just under 10,000 square feet of land. NHC has already reviewed and found the property not preferably preserved. We are existing a two-family with another two-family home. The only zoning waiver we're here is really just that, just to extend a non-conforming use. All of the dimensional requirements are met. So we're not requesting any relief whatsoever with respect to any of the dimensional requirements of the property. This is the zoning chart from the zoning memo that is in your packet. As you can see here, the proposed conditions are all in compliance with the by right development. We're not seeking any relief. FAR is in compliance. Lot coverage is well under the by right lot coverage. We have well above the open space requirements. The height of the building is several feet shorter than the by right allowed. Here's a landscape plan. So one thing that I do want to point out that is a request really from our landscape architect. I did upload these plans not so long ago, and it may not be in your packet, but this is one of those requests that's more of a preference. The architect, the landscape architect advised my client that it would be better use of the backyard for this right-hand unit by installing a short 1.5 foot tall what we're calling a retaining / sitting wall that will support and flatten out a little bit on this patio. Again, it's only 1.5 feet. It does not require any zoning relief. That's really the only grade change that would of any significance, if there is any. But if the city council does not find that to be or finds it to be objectionable or do not agree with this change, we can do without that, but that's something that we want to just put before you. Here's the site plan that's in your packet that does not have the retaining wall. And the next slide shows the one with the retaining wall. It's just a very, very small change. These are floor plans. These are also in your packet, and I can go over these if you like, but they are as part of my presentation if you wish to dive into it a little bit further. Couple of renderings generated through the computer programs by the architect, just to show you some context in terms of a street view. So that's my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
Planning, what would you like to add?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a brief presentation to share. This is petition 5-25. It's a special permit to raise the existing non-conforming two-family dwelling and construct a new two-family dwelling. So the subject property is located along Webster Street in the SR3 zone in Auburndale. The area is comprised of a mix of zones, including single residence 3, multifamily residential 1 to the east, as well as business 2 and manufacturing to the south along Rose Street, where my cursor is running along. While the neighborhood is comprised of predominantly single-family uses, there are other non-conforming two-family uses directly to the left and across the street from the property. So the zoning relief required for this petition is to alter and extend a non-conforming two-family dwelling use. And this one's a little bit different in that because two families are just simply not allowed in the single residence zones, the ordinance sets forth a standard to use to evaluate it. And it's, basically says for a use granted by special permit, the most restrictive density or dimensional control applicable in any district where the use is allowed by right shall be applicable. So due to that, this project is subject to new lot standards within the MR1 zoning district, as that is where this use is allowed by right. When reviewing the request, the council should consider whether the extension of the non-conforming two-family dwelling use will be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming residential use is to the neighborhood. Just some outstanding items. So planning recommended a landscape plan be submitted. The petitioner did submit those. The petitioner also indicated they would like to add a retaining wall, and it's sort of along the right side of the property. They submitted plans showing a retaining wall along the right property line. It does reach a maximum height of 1.6 feet where it curves inwards to the site. The wall is intended to allow for a more level surface or patio at the rear of Unit 2. A portion of the wall is within that right side setback, and that is reaches a maximum height of 1.2 feet in the setback. So this wall is considered by right, but it is a change to the plan and, specifically the grading between the initial submitted plan and the revised plans. They've also indicated they wanted to make changes to the submitted elevations. We have not received those, so if this project is approved, the initially submitted elevations will control. And if it's approved, it could, require consistency, or it could, depending on the nature of the changes, maybe pretty straightforward and administratively approved. But that concludes the planning presentation. We're happy to bring up any materials as requested if the council wishes to see them.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wewell. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this? Mrs. Belville. Ms. Belville, would you like to unmute and speak?
Sorry. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. This is just a prime example of what the problem is with the zoning in Newton right now. We're going to tear down a modest two-family affordable house and replace it with much more expensive two-family units. I just don't understand how this benefits the city at all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Belville. Anyone else like to make a comment from the public? I don't see anyone. We'll take it into committee. If a member of the public thinks of something, please raise your hand. President Laredo?
So two questions, really a common question. For the planning department, did this have to go through any kind of demolition delay?
Or Lawrence, do you want to, since
Yes,
you.
I can answer that, President Moreto. We did go through NHC review. They found the property to be not preferably preserved.
And look, I'm not suggesting that every property, that we should be preserving everything and not at times demolishing something. But I do think it's at least worth a question to the planning department. When these folks came in for the DRT, was there some discussion about preserving the existing structure, or is the existing structure so deficient that that really wasn't a very practical alternative?
So I think how we use the time in DRTs is really to get into the technical provisions of the zoning ordinance. At times, we'll also enlighten people on other ordinances of the city. It's really an information sharing forum of what other processes they can expect. I don't think myself, Ms. Kemet, or anyone else within, the team you see most frequently at land use are well equipped to speak to the historic nature of a dwelling. We're more the technical zoning, what zone are you in, what rules apply, but also how the city works together. And will you need to go to engineering? Do you need to go see the tree warden? That's really the purpose of the DRT. And of course, we tell them to go to historic if they haven't gone already. We also encourage them to talk to their neighbors. I don't think we evaluate the historic nature or status of a building unless we know it is historic. Then we, will encourage them maybe to work that into the design.
No, and I appreciate that, Ms. Kemet, and I understand the role you play. I'm just, this is really not a question directed as much as you, as really a philosophical question with practical implications for my colleagues on the council, which is we understand the limitations on the Historic Commission. They have a certain role. I get that. But we have heard repeatedly in this council about not wanting to just demolish an existing structure and in many ways, affecting potentially the amount of more modest housing. So I'm just wondering, I'm just positing the question where we have that discussion, and is this project an example for the Zoning and Planning Committee to look at a future date and ask, did full demolition make sense here or not? And again, I say that without knowing any of the particulars of the architecture or engineering or other things that may have made it really the only practicable alternative. One other question, that was my side comment, Madam Chair. Thank you for indulging me.
I'm going to have a follow-up to it, so go ahead.
And
Finish
you
your second
should have
main
cut me
point.
off if you weren't ready to do so already. But my other question relates to the grading. I noted in the planning memo, you said might be a foot or foot and a half max. Is that accurate, Ms. Wewell?
Yes.
And can we, is there some way of conditioning that so we're clear that it shall not exceed a foot or foot and a half and we don't have any grading problems in the future?
I think the committee, it's within their purview to do so. I personally think that there are enough controls in the plan referencing condition, and that is what staff in planning and inspectional services look at. We look at the grading plan and, so say this project is approved and we have a special permit approved plan So say the petitioner comes in for a building permit, we can kind of check, we'll be checking the grades anyway, and it all interplays with the height and the calculation for the basement. So we're looking at it anyway. I think it would sort of be a moot condition, but if the committee is more comfortable with that, I don't see an issue, but I will also turn it over to Attorney Lee on behalf of his client.
I don't feel at all strongly about it. And if you're comfortable that it is in that you're telling us that it's in the plans, that we can rely on those plans and therefore we don't have to worry about it because you're going to do your due diligence and check on that, then I'm fine with that. I'll leave it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Before I move to the next counselor, I just want to remind us all, both the committee and the council and the public, that any home that's over 50 years old does go before the Newton Historic Commission for consideration to be preferably preserved. So this must have been, I'm not sure, Ms. Wewell, if you know the answer to that or the result of that. I assume it either went before the commission or was administratively reviewed by the preservation planner, and it was deemed not to be preferably preserved. Am I correct in that assumption, Ms. Wewell?
I believe it went to commission. Is that right, Lawrence? Yeah, he's shaking his head. Did you apply for the demo delay, Lawrence? Or
That's correct. We had a hearing on this, and one of the comments I recall, the commission, maybe the chair, indicating that this house was more of a filler in the neighborhood as there were other more historically significant homes in the immediate area. So this was not, as compared to others, historically significant. And I do want to add one more comment if it's helpful. Should this property be subject to a substantial renovation or an addition to the existing home, that would have also required a special permit because we're extending an existing non-conforming two-family house. So if this were a home owner putting an addition onto this house, we would be before you for a very similar relief.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And while you have the microphone, is there anything you want to say about the potential grading?
Yeah, so really a two-part question here. One is whether I'd like to get some feedback from the committee, which plan, if you prefer. So we have two. One is with the short 1.5 foot tall wall in the back right corner. That would be our preference, which then would require technically a little bit more of a grading change because of that wall. Or if you dislike that idea, we can abandon that and go with the original proposal without the wall.
But the maximum grading change would be 1 to 1.5 feet within that new short retaining wall area.
Exactly. That would be our anticipation. Correct.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Lobovitz.
Thank you, Chair. A few of the members of the committee visited the property today, and I did have a question about how the existing home actually is a two-family. If you look at it, it appears like a one-family. Could somebody clarify how it's structured as a two-family? And then my second question, if I might, is do we have any reaction from neighbors, comments from neighbors? Thank you.
We've asked for that here. No one's hand is up, but we might hear. Mr. Lee, do you want to address some of those questions from Councilor Lobovitz?
Yes. So I have never been inside the property itself, but there are records in ISD that shows that this property is an existing non-conforming two-family house, even though it may not look like it from the outside. As it relates to neighbors, my client has reached out to all of the surrounding neighbors. And I've asked her repeatedly. She did it once, and I asked her to do it again just prior to the hearing to make sure. So we have reached out to neighbors.
But no responses yet?
No. There was discussions that she's had with several neighbors. But in terms of responses, it was just conversations that she's had.
All set, Counselor Lebovitz? Okay, Counselor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Lee, I am very pleased to see, or when I read the planning memo, that this project does not require any dimensional relief. I just wish some of your other clients that come before land use would have that same thing, but that's neither here nor there. For this project, there are going to be 2 garages, right?
That's correct. 2 one-car garages.
And the remaining cars for each dwelling will park in the driveway, right?
Correct.
And the reading at the planning memo, it seems like you can fit more than 1 car in the driveway. So you could have potentially more than 4 cars on site. Maybe you could put up the site plan that you shared earlier.
Okay, give me 1 second, please. Hold on, I have to make sure I still have that up. One second. I hope I have. Do you see this? Let me just go back to the site plan. Yep. And I'll zoom in on that. The driveway, each driveway is 12.5 feet wide. So it certainly cannot fit a car side by side. And
we're going, go on, sorry.
I'm sorry. So just by, in terms of scaling, there's a 31-foot setback line here. A typical car parking space is 9 by 19. So if you were to just eyeballing this, technically you could fit 2 cars within this driveway. But we have to honor this front setback, so that's why the driveway is the way it is.
Okay. The only thing I will say, just for now, if you could, you're at 12.5 feet wide for the driveway. Could you just make it a little narrower?
We can certainly, if engineering allows us, we can certainly do that.
You need engineering approval to make the driveway narrower?
Yeah, so we have to have at least a minimum width. Typically, it's about 10 feet. And if that is acceptable, then we will certainly narrow that out.
Okay, thank you. Your curb cuts are also 12.5 feet, right?
That is correct, yes.
Is there, forgive me, what's the, I guess, minimum curb cut width that we require, or maximum, or range, if you know?
I think off the top of my head, it's a 12 to 20 foot range, and maybe Katie can check me while we're talking, but that's off the top of my head.
I think that's right. I will say, I do think Lawrence was right that engineering does review curb cuts and driveway widths. And I think unfortunately they're not always aware of the, zoning widths allowed. So we try to kind of marry the two, and but per the zoning, it is between 12 and 20.
Okay, thank you. And then I did not do a site visit, so forgive me, Counselor Lebovitz. But I'm on Google Maps right now, and there are 2 trees in the berm. Are those 2 trees still there right now?
Just one. So the tree that is on the right side does not exist. There's just one street tree on the front.
And did your client apply for a tree removal permit?
I do not believe we removed that tree. So I think that was just pre-existing conditions.
Okay, but it's your intention that your client is going to keep the tree there?
The existing tree, correct? Yes.
Okay, good.
Around the tree.
All right, I thought you were going to remove them, but
no, there's one tree in the front, and we're going to keep that, and so we do not have any intentions to remove that tree.
Yeah, I see where the curb cut is, or the driveway is right now. Are you going to keep that same driveway?
Yes, exactly. We're going to keep the left side is existing. Want to keep that one, hence that little curvature, if you will, a shift, a slant of it. This would be the new curb cut, but there's no tree.
And then the other thing is, you were talking about changing the grade potentially by a foot, foot and a half for that retaining wall. My advice would be to leave it alone.
Okay,
No retaining wall, keep the building as small as possible from the sidewalk, okay?
understood.
All right, I'm all set, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Lucas. Counselor Leary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lee, can you remind me the size of the new house, the two of each unit? What their square?
Yep, so approximately the building, is 4,500 square feet with 2267. That's the approximate square footage of each unit.
Okay. Each unit's about 2267.
Correct.
Okay, so it is significantly larger than the original building there.
That is correct.
Esther's, it's like 2,578 square feet.
Right, and that's what and none of the dimensional requirements, and this is, FAR is in full compliance. Lot coverage is actually under, so we're over 5% lower on lot coverage. And our height is several feet lower. So we're at about 33.5 feet tall, where 36 is allowed. And in terms of lot coverage of 30%, we're under that. Maybe I can pull up the zoning table if that
That's
that is
fine.
helpful.
That's fine. I
Not
saw that you
necessary.
needed very little relief on
Yeah.
on this part. I mean, I am sympathetic to Ms. Spellwell's concerns about, we're taking down a more affordable home that's quite a bit smaller, and we're building a new one here. But I don't think that's really our purview here at Land Use. So I'm looking at what's before us. And I know people like larger homes too. And we still have private property rights. So I don't have a problem with that. One other concern was you're increasing the impervious surface by 1,300 square feet. Is that all driveway? And I wanted to know if there was any way that there could be possibly a reduction in impervious surface, or if you have any plans to use pervious materials in the driveway.
In terms of pervious materials, I have to ask my client about that. I believe the impervious surfaces also accommodates the home as well as the driveway. So, right, so it's a combination of those two.
Footprint of
But
the home is part of that.
that's correct. So open space counts with if you have driveway and a home. Lot coverage is really just a structure with a roof over it. But those numbers are we are well over the 50%. So let's say this were a single family home. In that case, no special permit is required because we're in an SR3 zoning district. Same open space requirements in that zone, so 50%. So someone can build a larger single family home here with just minimum of or 50% open space. But here we have, I believe it was 67% open space. I can pull up that table if needed.
Is this an all-electric building?
We have to comply with the current ordinance and all electrification, so it will be.
Okay. And I don't really have a problem with that small retaining wall in order to facilitate a little more living outdoor space. 1.6 feet, was it? To 1.2 feet?
1 to 1.5 feet.
Correct.
So, yeah, thank you very much. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Counselor Lee. Counselor Block.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to compliment you and your client, Mr. Lee, on the design. Clearly, a lot of effort has gone into it, and the renderings are very attractive, and I agree with the Historic Commission's assessment of what's there now. The one puzzling thing that keeps recurring to me, which Councillor Lebovitz mentioned earlier, there's only one curb cut, and it looks like a single-family house. I appreciate there may be some historical identification of this house as a two-family. I'm not sure that really matters to what's before us. But there is a proposal to have a second curb cut and for this to become more officially a two-family house. I don't know if planning has any commentary on that, but it is just maybe just a quirk of the situation. I I would defer to the petitioner on the retaining wall height. I mean, in general, it'd be nice to avoid them, but this is a very low retaining wall. So that's just my commentary on that. One thing that I suspect the petitioner is quite aware of, and probably planning is too, Webster Street that this is on is a very busy street. For those of you who don't live in the area, this, I would call this a major secondary road that connects Auburndale to West Newton. Cars travel faster than they should, and there's a lot of traffic, so that the width of the driveway should be forgiving. The people who live here will probably often have cars on their tail and will feel that they have to turn in quickly. And I just hope that the width would be sufficient to accommodate that. So whether that's 12.5 feet or something else, that's, again, something for the petitioner to consider. But I like this design. I'll be supporting this. And I think this is in Ward 4. Am I right about that, Chair?
Yes.
So at the appropriate time, I'll make the appropriate motions.
Thank you. While we're still in committee, I'll make a few comments. And Councillor Maliki, I do see your hand up. Mary Lee Belville, I see your hand if you want to speak again. But while we're in committee, I'm just going to make a few comments here. I think this proposal is fine. One of the comments Mr. Lee made is that if it were a single family home, it would be very similar in terms of impervious surface. And I think that's what I heard him say. What I would say to that is it would be unlikely that there would be two driveways. And the driveways are a big component of the pervious and impervious surface. So there are ways of reducing it in terms of reducing the width of the driveway. I kind of agree with Councillor Block that I think perhaps 12.5 foot curb cut is appropriate, but that driveway could be narrowed after allowing for the curb cut. And it could also be made out of all or part pervious materials, as can the patios in the back. So there are ways of trying to reduce that, both the width of the driveway and the material of the driveway and the patios. In terms of the retaining wall in the back for the right unit, I think a 1 and a 1.5 foot wall in order to make a level patio area and have a seating wall is a very minimal thing. Should not disrupt stormwater or drainage, does not involve a lot of grading. I don't myself have any problem with that. So that's just my point of view on that. Councillor Maliki.
Thank you. So I actually have some tree questions, and let me first talk about the driveway situation, because as Councilor Block observed, this is a very busy street. This is around the corner from me. And I think it's very unfortunate that we're adding a second curb cut in this situation on such a busy street. I wish there were a way to have one curb cut for 2 units. Besides the fact that we're, adding a curb cut to a busy street, even though the right hands, and I appreciate that you're retaining the existing driveway for the left unit and avoiding presumably doing any damage to the street tree on the left. The aerial view on Google does show the missing tree on the right-hand side, but the fact that you're putting a second driveway there, I think is going to make it impossible to ever have a tree on that side again because of the driveway itself, and then planting distances that we generally try to observe near driveways and near other trees. So we're losing the opportunity to have another street tree on a busy street, and the, you know, the slight traffic calming effect that street trees do have. Bigger problem, I think, is I don't see a tree permit here, and I really think before the committee votes on this, it should be determined whether the current layout in the backyard complies or satisfies the tree permit. I assume you're removing the tree that, as you know, as I look at the Google aerial, the whole backyard is tree canopy. And I assume you're removing the tree that's on this property in the middle of the backyard, but I see two other trees along the property line with 14 to 16 Murray Terrace that are at the very least shared if they're not on the other property. And I don't know if you know offhand the diameter of those trees, but in the backyard, which could be very well within the critical root zone of those trees, depending on their size, you've got the 6 stormwater containment infiltration things in the backyard. Rather than, so I think you need to determine, are they too close to those trees along the rear property line? And if they are, move them to someplace like under the driveway where they don't interfere or damage the neighbor's trees. I would, on that question of the retaining wall, I would agree with Councilor Lucas to leave it alone. Thank you.
And by leave it alone, you mean not install it?
Right, not change the grade.
Versus leave it alone as planned. Okay, thank you. Councilor Downs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have no problem with the small retaining wall in the back. And I do think in looking at what's there versus what's proposed, this meets our criteria of saying, you know, what was there? Are we improving this lot? And I think we are. I wanted just to talk a little bit about the analysis, and that's because we have another one coming up about the 2 garages not touching each other or touching living space. You know, I think this is a problem with the zoning, and I'd like to see our zoning and planning committee take this up, because this forces us into the 2 driveway situation when we have a 2-family and each one has a garage, which is increasingly the case here. If that's how ISD is interpreting this, then I want to just bookmark this before we go for discussion when we come to the next petition. And that'll do it for me. Thank you. I otherwise think this is a lovely development and I will be supporting it.
Thank you, and good comment about being forced into 2 driveways and garages almost here. Ms. Belleville, your hand is up again. Does that mean you'd like to speak again?
Yes, if I'm permitted.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to share an observation about some of the comments about the Historic Commission review. It's not surprising at all that this was not considered preferably preserved, because the value in this house is not in the historic context at all. And in Historic Commission meetings, they will often comment that it's not their purview to talk about anything other than the historic value of the house. But it was a little concerning to hear Counselor Leary say that it's not in the purview of of this committee to make an assessment whether, you know, there's some value of preserving, and I apologize if I'm misrepresenting what you said, Counselor Larry, but, you know, whose purview is it to try to preserve our modest housing stock? And the comment from, I think, Counselor Downs to say that this is an improvement of the lot, I'm shocked to hear that this commission thinks that it's an improvement to replace two modest, affordable homes with two more expensive ones. I'm just a bit perplexed by the whole thing. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. Belville. I'll just quickly, can't resist addressing them a tiny bit. I can't speak for Counselor Leary. She can correct your understanding of what she said, but in my understanding, in fact, the Historic Commission does, of course, consider the historic significance of any home, and they also look at context. I don't know what their discussion was around this home, but the Newton Historical Commission does look at both those things. That is exactly what they do. We also do think about that. The Land Use Committee and the City Council do consider historic significance when we are thinking about the overall impact of a project. So, and I can't address, I don't want to speak for Ms. Downs, Councilor Downs, about whether the lot is improved or not, but Councilor Leary, do you want to clarify what you said compared to Ms. Belville's understanding? I'll give you a moment to swallow.
Didn't eat dinner. Sure. What I was thinking was that this is something that really should be addressed with our zoning. And I would like to see our zoning encourage smaller units rather than very large homes. That was my thought there. And that not to, when they come before us and, you know, this is the Land Use Committee. We're quasi judicial. We're looking at each project individually on its merits and whether it meets, what kind of relief it needs. So it's sort of a different category for me, but I do think we should address it in our zoning and planning committee.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? If not, why don't we consider the motion that Councillor Block is about to officially make?
Move to close the public hearing.
All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Move to accept the petition.
Do you have any changes to make to it or just as it was proposed?
I don't have any changes to make to it.
Thank you. Councillor Leary?
A clarification, we were given two choices with or without the retaining wall.
That's why I was asking him if he wanted to, does anyone, as I understand it, we're approving what was proposed, which includes the 1 to 1.5 foot retaining wall. If anyone wants to take that out, we heard a few people say they didn't want it and some people say they did. Yes, Councillor Lucas.
I thought it was before us without the retaining wall. No?
I saw on the plans that attorney Councillor Lee showed that the submitted landscape plan that they submitted, I believe today, included the wall. So that's what I think we're considering.
Okay. Can I make an amendment or a motion to amend said proposed plans
Of course.
to remove the retaining wall?
Yes, you may. Why don't we vote on that amendment first? Yes, we're going to roll call it. This is to approve the elimination or the non-construction of a 1 to 1.5 foot retaining wall on the rear right side. Councillor Block.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just through you, I'd like to ask Councillor Lucas why he feels so strongly about this.
Sure. Councillor Lucas, tell us.
It's a change of grade. That's my understanding of it, and I want to keep the building as small as possible from the sidewalk.
I don't think the wall has anything to do with the size of the building.
I thought It was to change the grade to lift it up, no? Can we ask Mr. Lee
Mr. Lee
for a
can clarify. My
clarification?
understanding was it was to make a more level area in the rear for a patio for that right unit, not about changing the grade or elevating the house. Mr. Lee, could you
Got it.
clarify that for us, please?
That is correct. It's in the backyard on the right-hand side. So you really wouldn't see it from the street, and it is to just level the backyard slightly so that you have a more usable backyard patio, and that's it.
It has nothing to do with the elevation of the structure.
Correct.
Thank you.
Can I withdraw the amendment?
Yes, excellent. I wasn't going to vote for it. Oh. No, I wasn't going to vote for it if it passed, but it's okay. I mean, if you went forward with it. So let's get back to the motion being made by Councilor Block to go ahead to say yes to the petition list presented, including a 1.5 foot retaining wall in the rear of the right-hand unit. Planning. For conditions, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So we do have the council order in front of us. The relief is to extend that non-conforming two-family dwelling use in the single residence 3 zone. We, pointed to that the proposed dwelling complies with more restrictive dimensional standards for a new lot in the MR1 zoning district. Also, the use has operated as a two-family use since 1953. There are also many other non-conforming two-family uses in the immediate vicinity, and those were also outlined in the planning memo. And as we scroll down, I did make some changes to the order that you can see in red line here, based on the plans received today. So that includes the revision date to the plans that reflect the retaining wall on them. And then as well as the grading of the property that we will also look at when this comes in for a building permit. Also added the landscape plan that was submitted. And the remainder of the order is pretty standard conditions. Pest control, tree preservation, construction management plan, O&M plan, and then the standard building permit condition, occupancy condition, and then electric, even though I'm wondering if that's necessary anymore. So I will check on that. And that is the order as presented.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wewell. Let's go ahead and take a vote.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lovovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Our last item for the night is number 362-24. We've seen this before, but it's come back in a altered version. It's a request to allow 4 single-family attached dwellings, and we'll hear that that's no longer the case, to reduce the side setback and to allow a driveway within 10 feet of the side lot line and parking within 20 feet of a boundary line at 51 Oak Ave. Mr. Morris, I see you're already at the podium.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for your perseverance. Reminded me what those times when I used to sit over there and then think to myself, you have to love what you do, whether you're on this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle. I'm pleased to report that at the last meeting, of course, back in the fall, it was suggested that we seriously take a look at reducing the number of units, and we actually immediately set about to do so. And the results of that work we're presenting here this evening. I wonder, I took the liberty of producing a package of materials on your desk for several reasons. The first, of course, is because of my notoriety and not being able to handle things virtually. And the second is because some of these plans are difficult to see. And so I thought that if you had them on your desk, it might make it easier for you to review. Notwithstanding that fact, I have a fallback position. I wonder if I could, even though I'm not here, whether my wife, who I hope is still online, could share the screen. Yes, there she is.
Alice, you may share your,
We may have difficulty because the landscape plan, which was the lead, both in the,
perfect, we see it, thank
oh,
you.
there it is, great.
Nice job.
We'll start with the landscape plan because I think the actual site plan is much more difficult to follow when we're pointing out the changes. Obviously, you see that we have the previous plan had the duplexes perpendicular to the street with the front doors facing the side lot line. We reoriented the building in the back so that they face forward, and we basically reduced the duplex and oriented a single-family house, in a sense, reestablishing a sense of streetscape that wasn't there initially. The other impact, of course, was to eliminate two previous requests for relief. Those involved locating a driveway within 10 feet of the setback and locating parking also within a side setback. And we've eliminated both of those. Then that impact is that we have now created a 14-foot wide landscape strip on the south side of the driveway, as you can see there. Immediately adjacent to that is a 12-foot wide driveway. What is not shown on this plan is the fact that we have our civil plan, which I will show you later. Our civil plan proposes to use pervious pavers at both of those adjunct driveways that provide access into the in the back of the building. You see driveways, single driveways, providing access to a single car garage. The building in the front has a two-car garage, which is oriented by on the side by coming down the driveway and taking a turn to the right. Actually, I even remembered to bring my pointer. So here is the this organization is killing me. This is a two-car garage entrance. There is sufficient area, actually, if there should be guest parking to park in front of that driveway. In addition, the way the site is laid out, you can see with the direct access down the driveway to one of the two units in the back and access to this unit here. It would be possible, I suppose, to park or guest parking if someone were parked here without impacting the other owners. This is to be a condominium, so of course it will be covered by a condominium master deed in which the use of the common areas would be laid out and specified. The relief we are seeking, we are seeking no relief on landscape. The requirement is 50%. We are at almost 72% open space. The lot coverage is 25% for attached dwellings, 30% for two-family dwellings, and we are at 18%. And the heights of the buildings are being measured from the existing average grade. You know, that's very important in light of the fact that you changed the ordinance, which took effect on January 1st. And the heights of the buildings are approximately 34 feet in each case. We do need relief because these are technically called attached dwellings. So we need as you know, there are increased setbacks 25 feet all around. That does not pertain in the front because we are using the average of the houses on either side of us, and our setback is compliant in that regard. We have a 15-foot setback on this side. We have a 12-foot setback for both buildings on the other side, for which we need relief from the attached dwelling requirement of 25 feet. Other significant things of note. So the relief essentially is reduced to allow single-family attached dwellings and for these relief on these two side setbacks. We can, if you want to see the elevation, you have pictures of the elevations and the floor plans in your packet. So I think, what else? I think, oh, very important. The landscape plan. Anticipating someone might ask, there are no invasive species. In fact, at the suggestion of the chair, we basically substituted native plants on our planting plan. So we're trying to meet the most advantageous requirements associated with projects of this type. I think I can conclude my presentation at this time. I know if we have any questions about it, we can certainly bring up the other things on the screen, and I'll attempt to answer them as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris, and we know you're here if we have questions, which we probably will. Thank you very much. Planning, let's hear from you. Is that Kat Kemet?
It is. Let me just sort of take that screen sharing away. Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Kat Kemet again from the Planning Department. This is petition 362-24, a special permit for 51 Oak Avenue. The public hearing for this petition was opened on October 22nd, 2024. At that time, the petitioner proposed 4 single-family attached dwellings, which required relief for the use, a reduced side setback, and to allow a driveway within 10 feet and parking within 20 feet of a side lot line. I won't go into too much detail. I think Attorney Morris went over some of those major changes, but we have, of course, received updated plans since then. So this is a similar design in some ways with some of those changes that he walked through. This is the neighborhood, which is primarily residential. It's on Oak Avenue in the Multi-Residence 1 district in West Newton. Webster Park abuts the site, and there are several associated sports fields nearby, and there are single and multifamily dwellings nearby. The petitioner is proposing to demolish the existing building and construct 3 single-family dwelling units in 2 separate buildings, with 2 units in the rear building and 1 at the front. This is different from the previous design, which had 4 dwelling units in total, so that has been reduced to the 3 units. The relief needed for a driveway within 10 feet and parking within 20 feet of a side lot line no longer applies, so that's been removed from the zoning relief shown here. Other changes include a revised landscape plan and the inclusion of permeable pavers. The current design for the project needs 2 elements of relief for the attached single-family dwelling use and to allow those reduced side setbacks. And in terms of criteria, the council should consider if the site is an appropriate location for the proposed development with reduced side setbacks, if the project as designed will not adversely affect the neighborhood, if the proposed development will create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, and if access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. And I am happy to bring up any materials or plans submitted at the committee's request here. That concludes my comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kemet. Let's first see if there are any members of the public who would like to speak or ask questions. I see none in the chamber. I'm seeing if any hands are up on Zoom. I'm going to give it a minute or half a minute. And if you are here and think of wanting to raise your hand later, go ahead. As far as I know, we have not received official letters from any neighbors. I know I have heard from some of them myself. Mr. Morse, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, there were 5 or 6 neighbors that appeared at the last hearing. 2 of whom we had email addresses for. The people who live across the street, Jeff Zabel and Kathy Kale, we sent them full copies of the plans more than a week and a half ago, full sets. And Mr. Fran Urati, who lives at 21 Oak down the street, who you may know is an activist and following land use matters. We did the same, sent him a full set of plans a week and a half ago. And then I advised my client to go actually out and knock on doors to specifically identifying the people who had spoken previously, and he reported back to me that he had done so.
And no objections or no raves, but you did good community.
Girardi had asked about parking. And I said, my response to him by email was the fact that the reduction impact, with the reduction of the number of units obviously would reduce the number of cars going to and from the site.
And it looks like there's some capacity on site for guest parking too.
Right.
So, well,
I should also, I know that one of my colleagues, Mr. Lee, was quite proud to point out how compliance with various things. The FAR, even though FAR doesn't apply to this project because it's attached dwellings, the allowable FAR is 0.38 and we are under that at 0.36.
thank you, Mr. Morris. I still don't see any hands up, so I'll take it into committee, but I'll just preface it by saying this revisiting of this project to me is a great example of why the special permit process really helps get us a better product at the end. Between taking comments from this committee last time and adjusting your plans, and taking comments from the neighbors in terms of number of units and orientation and driveway, I think that what you've presented tonight is a much more palatable project, and I thank you for taking the input and changing things, and for your client for doing that, because I think what we are seeing tonight is a lot better than what we saw last time. So thank you for that. And it's just a pitch for the special permit project. And for people who say we approve everything, I'd like to point out that we approve things sometimes with positive changes over what's come before us in the first place. And right now, this looks like an example of that. So let's hear from other people in the committee. Who would like to speak? Councilor Leary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share your sentiment. Everybody was very well organized at our meetings this evening. Very appreciative of that. And you made some great changes. I remember last time also the street hadn't been paved, and there was that was one of the issues that came up. So you've got all the parking on site, and I like your landscape plan a lot, and I'm glad you're using all natives. You're right near Dolan Pond here, and I know the back of of this property is near a wetland, right?
Yes, it is.
And is there any part of the property that has any conservation restriction on it or anything like that?
No, in fact, we drew the line, we went to Conservation Commission before filing the special permit application.
Yeah.
And a lot of work was done with the commission, and they established a line, and everything is forward of that line.
Okay.
Forward of the no build line.
Yeah, I remember that Dolan Pond is a very wet area. Good
It's actually
birding.
shown on it's shown on the
Right.
site plan.
Site plan.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah, I don't really have any concerns here, so thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilor Leary. Councilor Lebovitz?
Councilor Leary has addressed the issues that I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Downs?
Hi, I will concur with my colleagues on this. However, I'm a little confused, and I want to be absolutely sure of the architectural plans that we are approving for this. I see the landscape plan, the compiled memo, and I see the duplex plan dated 1/17/2022 in the materials. And the first page of that shows the duplex frontage. And perhaps Ms. Kemick can call this up. It shows a garage going left to right, garage, front door, window, garage, front door, window. And I will remind you that at the last petition, I looked at the analysis by planning, which says that Inspectional Services has interpreted section 1.5.5.1.b in that a garage is not considered part of a dwelling unit because it is not habitable space. Living space, which does not include garages, must be touching living space in the adjacent unit for the full height of the separation. This means that having two attached garages touching is not allowed, nor is it allowed to have one garage touching living space of an adjacent unit. So just before we approve this, I'd like to ask the petitioner and the planning department whether this is the correct frontage for the duplex part, one, and two, whether they would have to come back for a consistency ruling with this plan because the garages are both on the left side of the front door rather than on the outside of the units. I prefer this personally, but if that's how inspectional services interprets our zoning, then I don't want to be approving this and finding out later that they have to come back in again. That would be silly.
I can jump in and speak to the interpretation part. So that only applies to two-family dwellings. This is a different building type with single-family attached dwellings. So the definition of the two-family doesn't allow, sort of what I set forth in the prior petitions memo, but because we have a new building type before us, with this petition, it's a little bit more flexible.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, this is single family attached dwellings. So, and I'll,
So
get
if they
over-
had proposed two single family attached dwellings for that,
well, they can't because you need a 3 unit.
I
minimum.
see.
Yeah, it's sort of if then, choose your own adventure.
That makes things much more complicated, but that clears up this particular matter and the consistency issue, in which case I have no issues with this, then more power to you guys.
Thank you, Counselor Downs. Mr. S. Lewis, you had your hand up and now it's taken down. I want to be sure that you did not want to speak. You can unmute yourself if you want.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm the architect for the project. And I was concerned myself about that rule that doesn't allow living area adjacent to garage. It's something I've brought up in the design process. And I just want to, reaffirm that what you see is, if you don't have the most recent drawing, it hasn't changed in a while. But yeah, that is our intent to seek relief or ignore that particular rule, because it would drastically hinder us in a satisfactory driveway arrangement. So even though normally inspectional services doesn't want garage areas next to living areas of the different unit, that is what we're proposing, and I think it's reasonable.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I just want to clarify that you're not actually ignoring the rule. The rule doesn't apply to you.
That's all the better.
Yeah, yeah. You are following the rule that applies to this zoning, which is for single family detached.
Okay, then I'm relieved.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Councilor Block.
Thank you, Chair. When I first saw this plan, I was intrigued with the flood line and with the proximity to Dolan Pond. And I wondered how well established this flood line was and whether there'd been any reexamination of this flood line in light of our changing climate conditions. And I guess through the chair, I asked the planning department if that had come up in their consideration.
Or perhaps what they may have learned talking to Jennifer Steele, the Conservation Commission, about this.
Sure.
I think Ms. Kemet, did you have any conversations with Concom about this? Or we could also ask the petitioner's attorney about that. In my experience, Ms. Steele is very thorough in her analysis. of these situations. But what, does planning have anything further to add to that? And if not, Mr. Morris, do you?
This is Kat. I'm sure Attorney Morris can speak to it maybe in greater depth because he was really working with the Conservation Commission, but they did go through a rigorous review process with Concom and they fully signed off on this plan.
Madam Chair, I can't add anything because I was not involved in it. They hired a specialist, a hydrologist, to deal directly with the Concom.
Well, that's good to know also. Mr. Block, does that somewhat answer your concern?
I guess it answers it as well as we're going to get tonight. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, again, we're in your ward. Oh, no, we're in my ward. We're in my ward. Who would like to make a motion on this on my behalf? Counselor Lucas.
Move for approval. Before I do that, I would like to close the public hearing.
Great, let's vote on that first. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 It sounds like everyone. And there is a motion on the floor to approve this petition. Let's hear finally again from planning about the conditions.
This is Kat again. So for findings, we have 1, the site is an appropriate location for the proposed project with reduced side setbacks because the site is in a residential neighborhood with dwellings that vary in size and scale and is close to multifamily uses on Elm Street. 2, the project as designed will not adversely affect the neighborhood because the lot area per unit and open space exceeds what is required for the district. 3, the proposed project will not create a nuisance or serious hazard because the 2 curb cuts on the site and driveways will be consolidated into 1 curb cut and driveway. The elimination of 1 curb cut reduces the likelihood of potential conflicts between drivers and pedestrians. And 4, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved because the driveway location is being maintained, and that's the driveway on the left. And the conditions include the plan referencing. So that includes the architectural plans for the 1 unit in the front and the 2 units in the back, and the site plan and the landscape plan. They will need to provide an operation and maintenance plan, pest and rodent activity remediation, a construction management plan will be required, all electric, and standard building permit and occupancy conditions would apply here. And all landscaping would need to be as is shown in the landscaping plan.
Thank you. I think we're ready to vote.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Yay.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much for your input into this project, which I think is far better than the one that was first presented.